The resale price of Treasury stock may be less than its original cost. The shortfall would be debited first to paid-in capital from Treasury stock transactions. But this account is not allowed to go below zero, as you cannot have negative paid-in capital. So if this account's balance is too small to cover the shortfall, the remainder comes out of, which means is debited, to retained earnings, as we'll see in the following example. So we're going to have two different transactions where we're selling Treasury stock, and it will be below the cost that we paid. So as you remember up here in our Treasury stock account, we originally bought 1,000 shares at $5 per share. So this $5 per share, the cost, in other words, is a critical number for us to remember. So here's a transaction. We're going to sell 200 shares of Treasury stock for $4.30 per share. Originally, we bought it for $5 per share. So let's record cash. Cash is going to be 200 shares times 4.3. So that gives us $860 debit. Now we have to lower the Treasury stock account because we are getting rid of some of the shares. And remember, the Treasury stock always has to be recorded at cost. And the original cost was $5 a share. So the credit amount is going to be 200 shares times $5 per share. So let's post that to the T account also. Now, as you can see, the transaction doesn't balance. So the balancing amount will have to come out of paid-in capital from Treasury stock transactions. We just have to remember the paid-in capital from Treasury stock transactions account is not allowed to go below zero. So the balancing amount, you can just do the balancing amount as 1,000 minus 860, or you could say it's $200 per share, 200 shares sold times the loss of 70 cents per share. So let's post that to the paid-in capitals from Treasury stock transactions. So we're okay because this balance is now 60 on the right side. So it is not a negative balance. So we're okay at this juncture. There's our balance. So let's do another transaction. This time it's going to try to make this account negative. So here's a transaction. We sold 200 shares of Treasury stock, this time for $4.50 per share. So let's record the cash going up. And now we have to lower the Treasury stock account, but that has to be at the $5 cost. So that's going to be 200 shares times $5. Let's post that to the T account. And then the balancing amount has to come out of paid-in capital from Treasury stock transactions. But here's the problem. The balancing amount is going to be 1,000 minus 900, so $100. But this account only has a balance of 60. We cannot make this go below zero, so the most we can lower this account on this side is 60 to give it a balance of 0. So this transaction still doesn't balance. We need $40 on the debit side. And the rule is if the paid-in capital from Treasury stock transactions account cannot absorb the whole loss, then we have to lower retained earnings. So notice the 60 and 40 represents the $100 loss that we had. So retained earnings is going to be lowered. So that's how Treasury stock transactions are done when you are selling below cost. Now let's look at the stockholders' equity section after our Treasury stock transactions. So we've got our normal paid-in capital, we got preferred stock, paid-in capital in excess of par, common stock, paid-in capital in excess of par on the common. And then we have our retained earnings, and then treasury stock will be listed after retained earnings. And remember, it is a contra equity, meaning it lowers this whole equity amount. So that's why it is at a negative amount. And we have to show the cost of the treasury stock, $5 per share. Now, if we did have the paid-in capital from treasury stock transactions, it would go right here after paid-in capital in excess of par for common.